Hello viewers, welcome to the course on Fundamentals of Horticulture. Today we will be discussing about principles of pruning and systems of training of fruit plants. Training and pruning are important orchard operations. Both the operations form an indispensable process having direct bearing on growth, vigor of plants, yield and quality of fruits. A properly trained and pruned plant sustain heavy crop load and produce bounteous harvest of quality. Training refers to the judicious removal of plant part or parts to develop proper shape of a plant capable of bearing a heavy crop load, whereas pruning is defined as the judicious removal of plant parts like root, leaf, flower, fruit, etc. to obtain a good and qualitative yield. Training is a treatment given to the young plants to get a suitable or desirable shape with strong framework. It may or may not involve pruning. The removal of unwanted surplus annual growth, dead, dried and diseased wood of the plants is called pruning. Before actually discussing the subject of training, it is necessary to understand the various terms used to make the subject more intelligible. Trunk. The main stem of the plant is called trunk. Head. The point on the trunk from which first branches arise is called head. The main branches arising from the head are known as scaffold branches. Trees in which scaffold branches arise within 60 to 70 centimeter height from the ground level are called low head trees, and those in which they come out from the trunk above 120 centimeter are called high head trees. The angle made by the scaffold limb to the trunk or the secondary branch to the scaffold limb is called crotch. The main stem growing from ground level up to the tip dominating all other branches is called leader. This slide shows the wide crotch angle and the narrow crotch angle. Wide branch angles are stronger and narrow angles are weak and increase shading inside canopy. A vigorous growing unbranched shoot arising on any branch or leader is called water shoot. The growth appearing on rootstock portion is called water sucker. This picture shows the plant structure and the various plant parts which we have discussed in the previous slides. Now, the objectives of training: to facilitate orchard cultural operations, to provide an attractive appearance, to admit more light and air to the center of the tree and to expose maximum leaf surface to the sun. It is for increasing production and for complete color development of fruit. To protect the tree trunk from sunburn injury, to secure a balanced distribution of fruit bearing parts on the main limbs of the plant. Principles of training. The following general principles are to be observed. The branches should arise on the main trunk alternatively at intervals of at least 15 centimeter and not all at one place. They should be equally distributed around the stem. Upright branches should not be encouraged. Branches should have medium crotches. The most important part of training is the formation of the main framework of the tree. Usually, 2 to 4 main branches are encouraged. These should be allowed to arise from different directions and also at some distance from one another, so as to form a well-balanced head. The framework is greatly strengthened if the branches are spaced at about 15 cm distance with medium crotches of 40 to 50 degrees. If 2 or more branches of equal size are allowed to arise from one place, they form a bad crotch and often split from their common joint. Important systems of training. The first one is central ladder system. In this system, a tree is trained to form a trunk which extends from the surface of the soil to the top of the tree. In many kinds of trees, the central axis or the main branch naturally grows vertically upwards and smaller side branches grow from it in various directions. If the central leader is allowed to grow indefinitely, it will grow more rapidly and vigorously than side branches, resulting in a robust close center and tall tree. In such a tree, the bearing is confined in top portion of the trees. Merits and demerits of the central leader system. The main advantage of this system is the development of strong crotches. Its main disadvantage is shading of the interior of the trees. This weakens the central leader and thus shortens the life of the tree. Since trees are very tall, harvesting and spraying become difficult and costly. This picture shows the central leader training system for apples and pears. The dotted line represent branches that are removed. The lower branches, which remain more or less shaded, become ultimately less vigorous and less fruitful. Owing to the shading of the inferior, the bearing surface moves to the periphery, that is outer shoots of the tree. Thus fruiting surface is reduced and eventually yields are reduced. The very high shape of the plants makes them prone to wind damage. This method of training is not suitable for high altitude and hot arid places where wind velocity is high. This system is also called as closed center, since the center of the plant is closed, and also as pyramidal system, since the plant trained looks like a pyramid. This system of training is practiced in case of certain apple varieties and pears. The open center system of training. In this system of training, the main stem of the plant is allowed to grow only up to a certain height by beheading it in the young stage, that is, within an year of planting, and inducing all the subsequent vegetative growth by lateral branches. This results in the low head in which the bulk of the crop is borne closer to the ground. Merits and demerits. It allows more light to reach all parts of the tree, which is helpful for better color development of the fruit. Fruiting area is spread all over the area of the trees. Trees become low-headed, so pruning, spraying, harvesting, etc. are facilitated. The branches form weak and narrow crotches which may frequently break under severe stress and strains such as bearing of heavy crop and strong winds. Sun scalding of central leader is also possible. The branches form very close to each other, almost from the same spot. This slide shows the prune picture of a tree, an open center heading back of branches, and plenty of fruiting wood is clearly visible. This slide shows the open center system of training. The open center of the plant and the higher number of fruit bearing branches are clearly visible in the picture. In this system, the plants take a bowl or vase shape, which provides a good base for setting of frost. So, this system is not suitable for high altitude areas where frost observance is common. Since the main axis is removed, it leaves the center open and hence open center, and the tree looks like a vase bowl, hence it is otherwise called as vase system. This system of training is practiced in plums and peaches. So, briefly we can say that the vase system of training is practiced in plums and peaches. Modified leader system. This is intermediate between the above two systems and has the advantages of both. This system is developed by first training the tree to the leader type, allowing the leader to grow unhampered for the first 4 or 5 years. The main branches are allowed to arise on the main stem at reasonable intervals. After the required number of branches has arisen, the main stem is headed back and lateral branches are allowed to grow as in the open center system. Merits and demerits of the system are: this results in a low headed tree with well spaced limbs, well distributed fruiting wood, and low height to carry out orchard operations conveniently. The main examples are citrus, pear, apple, and walnut, etc. As you can very clearly see in this picture that merits of both the systems discussed earlier are very clearly involved in this modified central leader system. Now, a question arises that which system of training is the best? Among the above three systems of training, the modified leader system is the best and most desirable because narrow to medium crotches and thereby breakages are eliminated. The indeterminate growth of the central axis is also prevented, keeping the tree height under control so as to make orchard operations easy and cheap. No danger of sun scorching and fruit quality is good. Now, pruning. Pruning may be defined as the removal of any excess or undesirable branches, shoots, roots, or any other parts of a plant so as to allow the remaining parts to grow normally or according to the desire of the pruner. Pruning of any kind according to its severity changes the nutritive conditions within the tree and consequently limits or encourages fruit bud formation. Objectives of pruning: to control flowering and fruiting, to augment production in plants which bear on new shoots, to obtain regular bearing, to remove diseased, damaged, insect infected and weak shoots, to thin out flowers and fruits, to thin out branches so as to admit more light into the interior of the tree top so that the inner wood also becomes fruitful, to invigorate the plant, to have a balance between vegetative and reproductive growth. Principles of pruning. The first one is removal of water sprout. Crowded, diseased, damaged and insect infested shoots should be removed. Avoid bark injury while pruning. The branches of bigger diameter should be cut from downward surface. Pruning should be completed well in advance of flowering season. Now we will be discussing about methods of pruning. The first one is thinning out. When a shoot is removed entirely from the inception or from the point of origin so that no new shoot arises from that place, it is referred as thinning out. This thinning is practiced in the removal of shoots arising in unwanted places, water shoots, etc. This slide shows how the heading back and thinning of the branches is practiced. In heading back, you can clearly see the dotted marks on the top of the branches, and in thinning, you can see the dotted marks at the inception or origin of the branches, so that in thinning practice, the branch from its origin is removed. Heading back. When a branch is cut almost to the base, leaving a few inches of stump carrying few buds, it is referred as heading back. The shoot from the bud nearest to the cut takes the place of the prune shoot. Trimming. Cutting the growth of the twigs to a predetermined level, as in the case of fence, hedge and edge. Pollarding. Mere cutting back of the shoots indiscriminately to reduce the height of the tree is called pollarding. Pinching or tipping. Removal of the tip of the shoot to stop its indeterminate growth or to encourage the growth of the lateral buds is pinching or tipping. This is practiced in marigold and chilies at the time of transplanting. Disbudding, nipping or rubbing. Nipping or rubbing of young buds, preventing a chance of their sprouting, is called disbudding. Similarly, sprouts or buds on root stalks are disbudded. Deblossoming. Removal of surplus flowers to enable the tree to produce crops regularly year after year is called deblossoming. This is practiced in alternate bearers like mango, apple, etc. So we have learned in this slide that removal of young buds is called disbudding and removal of surplus number of flowers is called deblossoming, and both these activities help trees to produce more flowers and fruits. Dear viewers, today we have discussed about principles of pruning and various systems of training. Training and pruning are the most important operations in maintaining a fruit tree. The main objective of the training is to provide a proper shape to the tree plant, and the main objective of the pruning is to obtain good yield. In the pruning, the parts like leaves, roots, fruits, twigs can be removed, which will provide a good yield to the plant. We have also discussed about various systems of training like central leader system, open central system, modified leader system, and also learned that among these three systems, the modified leader system is the best one because it incorporates all the advantages of the other two systems. We have also discussed about the various methods of pruning like deblossoming, disbudding, heading back, trimming, apart from learning about the various parts of the trees. This concludes the topic on pruning and training. Thanks for your attention.